The smell reached me before the door was even fully open. Garlic and onion hitting hot oil, a combination I recognized immediately, because I had been the one to chop those vegetables on Sunday morning before a 7 a.m. shift. That was 41 hours ago. I had stored them in a glass container in the produce drawer of my fridge, under a piece of masking tape that said, "Amber, stir fry, do not use," because I lived alone and there was no reason to label anything in my own refrigerator. Except apparently there was. I stood in the doorway of my condo on the 7th floor of a building in Hamilton, Ontario, at 7:14 in the morning, still wearing the scrubs I'd worked 12 hours in. My feet had stopped feeling like feet and started feeling like weather. That low, permanent ache you eventually stop noticing because it's always there. For the last 2 hours of my shift, I had been thinking about my bed, the specific weight of my duvet, the way the east-facing window stays dark for another 20 minutes after I get home. The half hour of silence between when I walk through the door and when the rest of the world starts to wake up around me. I stood in my own doorway and smelled garlic hitting someone else's hot pan, and something in my chest made a sound like a door closing quietly, but for good. To understand why that moment mattered as much as it did, you have to understand what it took to get that condo. My name is Amber Tran. I'm 34 years old. I'm a registered nurse in the medicine unit at a hospital in Hamilton, where I've worked for 9 years. I do rotating shifts, days and nights, sometimes 3 in a row, sometimes 4 nights straight followed by a run of mornings. My schedule lives on a whiteboard in my kitchen and in a color-coded app on my phone, and I have become the kind of person who treats sleep the way other people treat money. Something finite, something you cannot waste. I moved to Hamilton from Scarborough when I was 24. I rented a basement unit in a triplex on Locke Street for 2 years, then a 1-bedroom on the mountain for 4 more. And through all of that, I put a fixed amount from every paycheck into a savings account I did not touch. The housing market in this country is, as most Canadians know, a specific kind of cruel. I watched condos I could almost afford in 2018 sell for $100,000 over asking a year later, and $100,000 over that the year after. I adjusted my number upward and kept saving. During the pandemic, I worked extra shifts when half the unit was off sick or burned out, and I was still standing, and I put that overtime straight into the account. 3 years ago, I bought this condo. 2 bedrooms, 730 square feet, 7th floor, with a northeast view of the escarpment. I had enough for a 20% down payment after 7 years, which meant no mortgage insurance, which meant a quiet, private satisfaction that doesn't make a good social media post, but is genuinely one of the best feelings I've had in my adult life. The keys were mine. The walls were mine. The masking tape in the produce drawer was mine. I met Adam Kurhanen at a friend's housewarming in Westdale about 4 years ago. He was funny in the way that takes you off guard. Not performing, just noticing things out loud in ways that made you look at the room differently. He was 32, worked in project management for a construction firm, and had a habit of sending paragraphs when a few words would do, which I found endearing and occasionally exhausting in equal measure. We dated for a year before we called it official, and official for 3 more after that. He had his own apartment in Dundas, 20 minutes away. We had talked, loosely, about eventually moving in together, the way you talk about things that feel true in principle but have no date attached to them. Adam's mother, Rhonda, had been part of the picture almost from the beginning. She was 64, recently retired from a position in regional government administration, and had raised Adam and his younger sister on her own after their father left when Adam was 12. I want to be clear, I respected that. Raising 2 kids solo in this country, with what those years cost a person, that is not nothing. I tried to like Rhonda. There were stretches where I genuinely did. She had a key to my condo because of a burst pipe scare 2 winters ago. I had gone to Scarborough for the weekend to visit my parents, and while I was gone, the building sent out a notice about water pressure issues on the 6th floor. Nothing happened to my unit, but the anxiety of being away with no one who could check in had felt real. Adam suggested his mother. She was reliable, she was 25 minutes away, and she would take it seriously. I said yes. In Canada, in February, practical arrangements make sense. She had that key for 2.5 years. In 2.5 years, Rhonda let herself into my condo without calling first 37 times. I know the number because I started to keep a note in my phone around the 10th or 11th visit. At first, I told myself her access was helpful. She would water my plants when I'd forgotten during a long run of nights. She would take in a parcel left in the hallway. I told myself the discomfort I felt was a side effect of living alone for too long, an over-calibration in my sense of personal space. Lots of people had family with keys. This was normal. Then she reorganized my kitchen. I came home one March evening to find every cabinet rearranged. The mugs I kept within reach of the coffee maker had been moved to the upper shelf I needed a step stool to access. The spices I kept near the stove, in an order I had developed over years of cooking in small spaces, had been alphabetized. Rhonda mentioned it later with genuine helpfulness. Alphabetical made more logical sense. Then she threw out my vitamin C serum. It was a Korean brand I'd ordered online, a small amber glass bottle that cost $62 plus shipping. I know that sounds excessive for something you apply to your face, but it was the only product that had genuinely worked on hyperpigmentation I'd been dealing with since my late 20s. I'd had it less than 3 weeks. Rhonda decided it looked expired. Something about the texture, and disposed of it while she was, in her words, just tidying up a bit. She didn't mention it. I found out when I reached for it, and it wasn't there. Then she gave my phone number to a real estate agent. She had apparently met this woman through a neighbor and decided, on her own, that Adam and I should be looking to purchase something larger together, that this woman was well positioned to help, and that I would want to know. The agent left me a voicemail on a Tuesday morning when I had just come off nights. I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I deleted the message and didn't bring it up for 6 months because I was tired and it felt easier. I told Adam about each of these things as they happened. He listened. He agreed. His mother could be a lot. He said he would talk to her. If he did, whatever he said produced no measurable result. On the morning I'm telling you about, I had just finished my 3rd consecutive night shift. The 3rd night is always the hardest. Your body has accepted the inversion, but your brain starts to revolt. Slower processing, small errors of judgment, the walk from the parking garage to my condo door felt longer than it actually was. I had texted Adam at 6:30 to say I was heading home. He responded with a thumbs up, which meant he was already at his desk. I put my key in my door, I pushed it open, the smell of garlic and hot oil. Rhonda was standing at my stove wearing an apron I had never seen before, which meant she had brought her own apron to my home, which was the detail that lodged somewhere in the back of my throat. At my kitchen table sat a woman I had met exactly once, 2 years ago at a family barbecue, Rhonda's older sister Vera. She was drinking coffee from my ceramic mugs, the hand-thrown ones I'd bought at a craft fair in Dundas the previous spring. Across from her sat a girl of about 17 who I did not recognize at all. I learned later she was Vera's granddaughter Jenna, visiting from Barrie. Jenna was wearing my McMaster shirt. I had worn that sweatshirt for 12 years. The cuffs were soft from washing, the drawstring had been replaced twice, and I had slept in it through 2 breakups, a death in the family, and more night shifts than I could count. She had it on like something she'd found at the back of a closet, which, from where she was sitting, was probably exactly what it looked like to her. Rhonda turned from the stove with the focused warmth of someone who is managing the room. Amber, perfect timing. I'm just finishing your stir-fry. There was so much prepped in the fridge, I knew you wouldn't want it to go to waste. The 401 was completely shut down last night with the ice, and I told Vera, come to Adam's friend's place. She won't mind at all. Adam's friend's place. I stood in the entrance of my own condo in my hospital scrubs, my badge still clipped to my chest, my bag over one shoulder. My mugs, my sweatshirt, my Sunday meal prep, which was supposed to cover my lunches and dinners for the rest of the week. This is my home, I said. It came out quieter than I intended. Rhonda tilted her head slightly, the way she does when she's recalibrating. Of course it is, sweetheart. I was just telling Vera what a lovely space you've made it. She said this toward Vera, not as a question. Vera looked at me with the expression of someone who has begun to understand that they may have walked into something. Where did everyone sleep? I said. Jenna took your spare room. Vera and I managed on the pull-out. The pull-out couch I had bought, so my sister would have somewhere to stay when she visited from Vancouver. I set my bag down. I called Adam. He answered on the third ring, his office in the background. Your mother is in my condo, I said. With your aunt and a teenager I've never met. They slept here. A pause. Yeah, she texted me last night. The ice storm came in faster than the forecast. The 401 was shut between Interchange and 50 Road. She didn't want them driving back in it. She didn't want them driving back, I said. It was genuinely bad out. They were already in Hamilton when she called me and Adam. I said his name, the way you say something when you are keeping very careful control over everything around it. Your aunt has been in my spare room. Your cousin's granddaughter is wearing my university sweatshirt. Your mother is standing at my stove, cooking the food I prepped for my own week. Silence. Then, in the tone I recognized, the one that meant please absorb this. Please don't make it a thing. I'm sure she didn't mean anything by the sweatshirt. It was probably just hanging there. In my closet, I said, in my home, that nobody asked me about. She was trying to keep Vera safe, he said. Can you maybe just let them finish breakfast? I'll talk to her tonight. I promise. I hung up. I stood in the entrance of my own condo and I let the arithmetic I had been postponing for 2.5 years settle into place all at once. Then I walked to the kitchen table, pulled out the chair across from Vera, and sat down. Rhonda turned from the stove with an expression that had shifted to careful optimism. Coffee? She offered. Rhonda, I said, I need to say a few things, and I need you to wait until I'm finished. She set the spatula on the counter. Vera went very still. I have been keeping a note in my phone, I said. Since October 2 years ago, there are 37 entries. 37 times you came to this condo without calling first. Some of those times I was asleep between shifts. You came in anyway because you had your own key and the soup needed to be dropped off or the plants looked dry. I know because you would leave things behind. Jenna had stopped eating. You reorganized my kitchen without asking. You threw away a product from my bathroom that cost $62 because you decided it had gone off. You gave my phone number to a real estate agent without asking me because you decided Adam and I should be looking for a bigger place. You left my back patio door unlocked twice, which on the 7th floor is not a small thing. I paused. And last night, you brought 2 people into my home while I was working a 12-hour night shift, put them in my rooms, and this morning you told me it was Adam's friend's place. Rhonda opened her mouth. I'm not finished. She closed it. You have a key to this condo for emergencies. A pipe bursting, a fire alarm, an actual emergency, not for any of this. I held her gaze. I saved for 7 years to buy this place. 7 years of rotating shifts and overtime, and a savings account I didn't touch. This is not a family property. It's mine. And I need you to understand that means something. I need to be able to come home after 12 hours on my feet and know that what is here is what I left. The kitchen was completely quiet. Vera stood up first. She picked up her mug, set it in the sink, and touched Jenna's arm. "We'll go," she said, not dramatically, just clearly. Jenna got up. She went to the back of the condo and came back with my sweatshirt folded in her hands, which I had not expected. She held it out to me without making eye contact, and I took it, and I said thank you, and I meant it, because she had done nothing wrong. Neither had Vera. They had been told to go somewhere, and they went. It took about 20 minutes for them to collect their things. I held the door. I said, "Thank you for coming," because that's how I was raised, even when I am furious. Rhonda was last. She stopped in the doorway. Her face had gone somewhere I hadn't seen it go before. Not defensive, not managing, just quiet and slightly undone. "I'll call Adam," she said. "That would be the right thing," I said. I closed the door. I changed out of my scrubs. I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table in the silence I had been looking forward to for the last hour of my shift, and I let myself sit in it for a long time. Mochi, my cat, came and draped herself across my feet, which is what she does when she knows I need the weight of something alive against me. Adam came over that evening. He had talked to his mother, he said, and his voice had the particular flatness of someone who has had a hard conversation and is still moving through it. He sat at the kitchen table where 6 hours earlier, Rhonda had been hosting breakfast with my prepped vegetables, and he told me he hadn't known the overnight was happening. His mother had texted him to say she was at my place with Vera, and he had assumed I knew. He had read that message and assumed I knew. We sat with that for a moment. "The key," I said. "Tonight," he said. "I'll drive over now." He did. He came back with it and set it on my kitchen counter, and we didn't speak for a while. We ordered from the Thai place on King Street and ate on the couch, and Mochi came and wedged herself between us with her tail curled under her, which is what she does when the room's energy is uncertain. Then I told him about the real estate agent. He put down his food. "She called me," I said. "A Tuesday in September. I'd just come off nights. She left a voicemail saying Rhonda had passed along my number because she thought we might be looking to buy together." He was quiet. "You didn't know," I said. "I know you didn't. That's part of what I'm telling you. I've been absorbing things for 2 years without saying the full version out loud. I'm saying it now. I need you to actually talk to her, not to smooth it over. To tell her what this has been like, to be specific." He looked at me with the expression of someone revising an understanding they thought was complete. It is not a comfortable thing to see on someone you love. But I needed to see it. I needed to know he was doing the real calculation. 37 times, he said. "I have the dates." He drove to his mother's that night and came back with the key. 3 days later, after a long phone call he told me about in full, which was itself a change. No more vague reassurances, no more "I handled it." He said she had cried, then gone defensive, then cried again when the defensiveness ran out. Underneath it was something he described as a person who has organized her entire sense of purpose around other people for so long that she genuinely doesn't know what she is without access to them. He had told her the unannounced visits were finished. He had told her this condo was my home and she was a guest in it. He had also looked up a volunteer literacy program at the Central Library that needed people with administrative backgrounds. and he'd sent her the link. She didn't speak to me directly for about 3 weeks. That was uncomfortable. It was also workable. The silence was easier to sit in than the intrusion had been. When she called, it was a Wednesday evening and I was making dinner after a day shift. I almost didn't pick up. I did. "I owe you an apology," she said, without preamble. "I've been sitting with it for 3 weeks, and I keep trying to find the angle where I'm more right than I know I am, and I can't find it." I stood at my stove, still in my scrubs, stirring something that didn't need stirring. "I hear you," I said. "That's all?" "For now, yes." It was a short conversation. It didn't need to be long. Things changed, though not all at once and not without effort. Rhonda volunteers at the library now on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Through another volunteer, she found a hiking group that goes out on the Bruce Trail on weekends, and she has started sending me photos from the trail with a lightness in the messages I hadn't heard from her before. She comes to dinner on most Sundays when I'm not working. She calls first. She brings something, usually a bottle of wine from the LCBO or a loaf from the bakery she discovered near her house. She sits where there is room. She has not used a key she no longer has. Adam and I are still together. Still in 2 separate apartments, still talking about eventually, still working out what that means in a housing market that makes nothing easy. Something recalibrated between us after that February morning. I stopped absorbing things that needed to be addressed. He stopped expecting me to. That sounds like a modest change. It is not modest. It is the thing on which everything else has been resting. I stopped updating the note in my phone after Adam returned the key. I still have the 37 entries. I'll probably delete them eventually. The count was never meant to be evidence for anyone else. It was for me, for the version of me that kept asking whether she was being unreasonable, whether she was too sensitive, whether the conflict was worth it. The 37 entries were how I finally answered that version of myself. It is worth it. You have the right to say this is mine. You are allowed to mean it completely. 7 years of saving. A 20% down payment on a 7th-floor condo with a northeast view of the escarpment. My mugs, my sweatshirt, my masking tape in the produce drawer that I no longer need to use because I live alone and there is no reason to label anything in my own refrigerator. That is what home means, and now it means it.